What is going on, comic fam? It's your boy, the Bearded Comic Bro, and I am joined by comic creator Drew Edwards. Welcome to the show.
Howdy, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. You are comic creator, worked on Halloween Man, Lucy Chaplin, like so many different things. And I want to hop into your books. I want to talk about some of your projects and stuff. But as my listeners and viewers always know, I like to find out, how did you get into comics? Or did you always love comics growing up, or is this kind of a later thing that happened in life?
So going all the way back to my childhood, I was a comic book fan. How I got into comics is kind of it's not a real typical way. I grew up in a rural town in Texas on a lake called Possum Kingdom. There were no comic book stores around. There wasn't really too much in the way of stores until we got a Walmart. So the way I read comics is I would go up to the local library, and they had all these hardbound. They had taken all these comics from like the 40s all the way up into the 70s, and they had just bound them. And so my first comic books were actually mostly golden and silver age comics. And because of that, like my favorite characters were pretty the Stanley Jack Kirby Fantastic Four. I was also into like weird obscure characters like the Human Bomb and things like that. So I wasn't coming into comics necessarily from contemporary stuff, and I didn't really come across more modern stuff until again we got a Walmart, and the Walmart carried more modern comics. But that wasn't even until like the late 80s. So I'm dating myself right there, but it's
No worries.
but that silver age sensibility is something that I continue to carry into my work to this day, because I just have such an affinity for that time period, because that's what sparked my love of comics.
That's that's so cool, and I love it. You grow up in a small town, like when you are super excited that a Walmart was coming.
Oh yeah.
Like I grew up in the town with one stoplight, and when we finally got a McDonald's, like my senior year of high school, we were like, "Gang, we've made it. We finally have a fast food restaurant in our town."
Very much the same way. Like we didn't get a McDonald's till the 90s, and now it's now the town's actually quite touristy, because they've had a whole Holiday Inn put in. Apparently they have a lot of nice restaurants in the downtown area now. So it's changed. I just was informed by somebody I went to the high school with that they actually have a skate shop now, and I was like, I would have never imagined that in a million years growing up, because I just felt like I was not in civilization. So
it's so
yeah.
true. It's so true. So
Yeah.
how did then, like you said, you got into the comics during the Silver Age, and it's funny you say that, because I see that bleeding into a little bit when some of the Halloween Man I checked out and stuff, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it now. How did you transition from wanting to get into writing and creating comics then?
So when I got to be a certain age, when I got to be like a preteen, and my level of comprehension was more like an adult level of comprehension, I started to understand that when I was opening up these comics and I saw the credits, that this was a job. Like, people were getting paid to do this, and these names were people that were working in comics, and I was like, this is what I want to do with my life. Like, I love comics so much. I just think it's the best way to tell a story. So like, I have found my calling, and I need to seek out how to go about making my life a life about comics.
So good. So good. And so I mean, that sounds like your process was, you found out you could get into, like, this is something that you could do, and you're like, let's do it. So how did, what was like your first comic and your first foray into writing a comic book?
My first attempt to write a comic book was first of all pretty bad, but It was for the school newspaper. It was called Jack Frost. It was about a snowman that was also a vampire hunter. And the concept is funnier than the comic actually was. But I always was, I had a twin, and they dabbled in art and everything. And so from a fairly early age, even before that comic, we were creating our own comics, as like about like Godzilla or Dracula, whatever movie monster or superhero we would just try our hands at. But that's what you do when you're a kid and you have too much time on your hands. Being a small town kid, it kind of forces you to let your imagination run wild. But as I got older, thankfully I got better at understanding the mechanics of how a comic should be written.
So let's talk a little bit about Halloween Man, because I feel like we're getting right into your wheelhouse of season here. I see you got Ghostbusters behind you. You got a Ghostbusters mug. You have a comic called Halloween Man. This is like October's coming, and you're like, yeah.
It is my time of year. Around September, I become a very in demand person for some reason that I can't quite put my finger on. So Halloween Man was the way that came about when I first moved from the PK area up to Dallas after high school. I set about on my quest to become a comic book creator. And so the very first thing that I did is I just started hanging out at a local comic book store called Keith's Comics, and it's on Mockingbird Lane. It's still there in Dallas. And I met this guy, Malcolm Harris, who is more of a role playing, like a tabletop role playing game guy. He's more in that world. But at the time, he was putting out a superhero game called Nemesis. And what he wanted to do was develop comics to tie in to Nemesis. And there were all the different types of characters you could be. And he was like, well, you're a horror movie guy, can you create the supernatural character? And I was like, okay, and I immediately started thinking about like different movie monsters, like what the ones that I liked. I thought about Jason Voorhees, how he basically has a superpower, which is he always comes back. I started thinking about zombies and werewolves, and like what could I do to make this character different? It's like, well, he'll eat other monsters. He'll be like a monster predator. Okay, so what am I going to call this guy? And I was literally at one point just driving around in my neighborhood, and I was listening to a Misfits CD, and I had it on a loop on the song Halloween. And eventually I was like, Halloween Man. And then it started to just kind of come together with like the pumpkin shirt and the sort of zombified punk rocker look and everything. And because once I had the name, it just lended itself to everything. So from there I created like the supporting cast and everything. But about a year into developing it, and I apologize, I'm gonna bum everybody out here for a second, but it's important to bring up. About a year into developing it, I was in a terrible car accident that killed my twin. And as you can imagine, that was very psychologically scarring. And I needed something to motivate me. So the comic became that. And because of that, though, it had taken on this like personal weight, because suddenly I was working through my survivor's guilt, my post-traumatic stress, all this trauma, and I was working through it through the comic. So eventually I was like, Malcolm, I'll buy you out on my contract and everything. I can't share this with you. This has to be its own thing now. And he understood.
Yeah.
And I started to develop it as a web comic, which was the right decision. It definitely helped uh, me just put my personal stamp, because it went from being art for commerce to art for art's sake, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's, I thank you for sharing. I know those types of stories are always, tough to go, but it's, that's where that idea that like art comes out of life and experiences and stuff. And it's, that's such a powerful aspect to have that as your, motivation for, you're going to take care of your property and your baby anyways, because it's your thing, but it just has a special place. So, that's so powerful to hear. So you went through this process of Halloween Man, and now we're getting to a stage here with you're re-releasing them now, right?
Yes. So if people who have followed Halloween Man for the last decade, like they'll know that we have had a home for the past 8 years on Comixology, and that's mostly been a harmonious relationship. But when they merged with Amazon last year, it became difficult. So I started looking for a new home for the characters, and I had some interesting talks with a lot of different publishers. Some of them pretty big publishers, some of them small publishers. But and actually, I was trying to get out of the digital space, but I ended up being contacted by these guys, Global Comics. That's comics with an X. And they talked to me about what they're interested in doing and how friendly they are to indies. And they really thought Halloween Man would be a good fit for their platform, and it could be a sort of signature series for Global Comics. So what we're doing in October, and people who look up Halloween Man right now, they're going to notice a steady stream of comics just coming in. But we are putting up all of the back catalog, including stuff that was not on Comixology, and we're putting it up there for free. So if you have never heard of Halloween Man, you can go check it out. If you are an old fan, you can get reacquainted. There's literally the best way to try it out, and also you can try out the Global Comics platform and explore all the other indie comics on there. They have a ton of comics from Valiant, they have a ton of comics from Top Cow. It's going to be a really amazing platform. And it's just great talking and working with people who are very positive about the comic book industry, because there's like so much doom and gloom that if you get on the internet, you get on Twitter, there's so many sky is falling kind of people out there. But these guys, I said this on another interview that I had done. These guys are almost futurists about comics. They're like, we believe comics has a place, and they're developing this app, and they're developing this site, and like the stuff that they've told me, like the site has already got an impressive amount of material on it. But let me tell you, like going into 2023, it's only going to get better. Like they've been sharing with me some very exciting stuff.
That's awesome. Yeah, I went, prepping for this interview. I even reached out. I was like, hey, do you have a PDF or something I can look? You're like, wow, you can just read the whole catalog. I was like, yeah. Holy buckets, let's go.
Yeah. There's 3 series individually on there right now. There's Halloween Man, which has 2 releases currently. There's Halloween Man Versus, which is self-explanatory. It's all of the mashups with classic monsters. It's also got our crossover with Hack Slash on there. And then there's Lucy Chaplin Science Starlet, which is all about Halloween Man's brilliant, buxom girlfriend. So You know, a lot of different flavors to try out, a lot of different, you know, awesome artists that I've worked with, including Nicola Scott, who is, you know, now a big DC star. You can see her first American work by checking out Halloween Man. So, you know, I'm really excited to share this stuff with people and share it in a bigger way than we've been able to do in the past.
I know we kind of hint around it a little bit, but what would you, if someone's listening to this podcast or watching this interview and they've never checked out Halloween Man, what's your elevator pitch for Halloween Man to them?
I will tell people what I say to people at conventions. It's the weird adventures of a zombie superhero and his sexy mad scientist girlfriend. It's a little bit Fantastic Four. It's a little bit Evil Dead 2. And those are two flavors that don't necessarily, I think people would think would go together, but oddly, I've made it work for 22 years now.
That's so good. That's so good. And if people then, you know, are gonna check it out via, you know, going to Global Comics and things like that, where's the starting point, the jumping off point? Because there's a lot of content out there in the Halloween Man universe. Where would you recommend, like, hop in here to test the waters, maybe?
Well, I'm a big believer in comic outreach. So all of the stuff that's being added to Global Comics is going to be done in a way that you can just jump in. You're getting a complete story arc. However, if you're wanting to really get back to it, on Global Comics right now, there is a collection called Halloween Man Super Deformed. It's got all the old web comics. This is the stuff that was drawn by Nicola Scott. It sets up all of the characters, develops the relationships and everything. So that would be the easiest jumping on point. Okay. But really, like, I don't want anybody feeling high and dry. If you decide, well, this storyline sounds more interesting to me, you can dive in. There is a biography of all the characters at the start of an issue. There is a synopsis of what the series is about. I want you to be able to jump in, and you're getting a complete story. All of these collections, they are all entire story arcs. You don't, you know, you can, there's breadcrumbs to other things maybe, but you're not going to feel like when you're done reading, like, oh man, you know, I didn't even get the whole story.
Yeah. You almost like it just teases you to want to check out more.
Yes. Well, I mean, that's the idea, right?
Right. That's what I ended up doing. I was kind of like, where do I start? And I looked at, I picked out Halloween Man versus Invisible Man. I was just like, that sounded like a cool thing. I grew up watching, you know, the Invisible Man movies, and I was just like, I want to see how this premise works out and stuff. And so it's very true to what you said, because we didn't have this conversation beforehand of, hey, what should I read? It was just like, I'm just going to try it. And it felt like a complete story. And I wasn't going like, what do I do here with this? So mission accomplished.
That's a story that I am particularly proud of. It's a bit darker than some of the other stories. Okay. I was going through a split up with my first wife when I wrote it, and I was living in Las Vegas. So like, it's funny because like now I'm having to go back and look at all this old stuff in like you know, on a deeper level than what I have. And like that, when I was looking through that one, I was like, this is twisted even by my standards.
So good. I just dove in headfirst on your dark twisted one. Awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm still here, so there it works. So
you lived the tale to tell.
Well, I always like to you know, when I'm doing an interview, I like trying to do some, you know, research, seeing what people created and things like that. And I noticed on your Twitter profile that you were a Ringo nominee. Talk to me about that, because the Ringos are freaking fantastic.
I to this day still don't know how I managed that one. It was 2020, which was the 20th anniversary of Halloween Man. It was also the year of COVID, as everybody, of course, is acutely aware of. I I put it out there, they make it to where you can, initially nominate yourself, but I was like, I'm not even going to make it past round one, because round one, like, your friends and fans, they can all vote. So like when I got in through round one, I was like, this is crazy. I didn't even think that happened. But in round two, like, other comic book creators have to vote to get you all the way in. And the panel of judges also has to read, like, I think they like 5 or 6 issues of your book to see that it's like of a quality level that they want to support. And the main judge was Jill Thompson that year, so I was just like, whoa, scary godmother, we're not worthy. But yeah, somehow I got all the way to the big night. Now, it was a little different that year because it was all, Baltimore Comic Con was all on Zoom, and so the award show was on Zoom, but my family all tuned in. And you know I even though I did not win, and I didn't really think I was going to win, as you can tell, like, I came at this from a very humble place, but just being there and having my name alongside those things, and somehow, having someone like Jill Thompson go, okay, thumbs up, this is good stuff. That's a prize in of itself. Like, like, what an honor. I know it's the cliche to say, well, it's an honor just to be nominated, but like, I felt like it was an honor just to be nominated. I was just happy to be there.
Yeah, and it's not it's not an easy thing to do. So like you said, to be nominated, that's a testament to your fan support off the bat to get that going, but then to what your books are, and to you as a creator, because yeah, you can get that first round, like you said, of like, oh yeah, if you got a good Twitter following, you can boot, but then to have people go, okay, let's dig into it. So that's so, and I'm assuming this was for Halloween Man.
Yeah, it was for Halloween Man. It was for a lot of what we were doing to celebrate the 20th anniversary at the time, which uh is going to be on Global Comics in a couple of weeks. So plug.
Nice. Do you remember some of the other people who were nominated with you?
Unfortunately, I don't. I was very just gobsmacked the whole time.
Yeah.
I was on a panel at one point, like, which you can still look up on YouTube, with like, David Avalone and Stan Sakai and a bunch of other people that were like, big name comic book creators. And I remember having this moment when, my when you're on these Zoom calls and suddenly your picture pops up, and then here's the creator of Usagi Ojumbo, and I'm like, I don't know if I deserve to be here. So like, there was a lot of that.
Yeah.
Like, I just kept having to remind me. It was like, well, if I didn't deserve to be here, I wouldn't be here. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, and and David, with the Elvira series that is being created, like, it's right in that wheelhouse. Or so yeah, it's so cool to just hear that aspect. And I was out at Baltimore last year and didn't go to the Ringos, but I was Ringo adjacent because I was at the hotel that all the Ringos were at, and so I was like hanging around, so I got to kind of experience it.
That's awesome. I hope to go to Baltimore proper next year.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be out. Not just supporting Halloween Man, but also sort of spreading the gospel of global comics at a lot of conventions next year. And I'm hoping we can make Baltimore one of them.
That's we had every intention of going out to Baltimore again this year, and then just some stuff came up that it's not going to be in the cards to go. But as a comic fan, as a comic creator, it's I think it's one of the best out there, because it is for comic book fans, and it is wall to wall comic books vendors. It's wall to wall artist alleys, and that's what they hone into. They say, this is it. We're comics. So
Excellent.
So definitely, yeah, if you can make it out, I highly recommend it for sure. So we've been talking a lot about Halloween Man and kind of how it started and this, is this something that you feel like you've got years and years of creating on this, or are you kind of like you're having your time with Halloween Man and then explore some other areas?
I never really get tired of the characters.
Yeah.
Last year I was at New York Comic Con and I bumped into Tim Seeley, and every time I see him, I feel like he's always like, man, all this time spent in that universe, like I haven't even done that with Hack Slash. And I think the thing is I've been able to create, because it's not just Halloween Man anymore. It's like this
Right.
whole world of these different characters, and sort of wherever I want to go, I can go. So I don't feel stifled by it. I do have other stuff that I am working on. I'm working on a book actually on Christmas folklore, because I have to dominate the entire holiday season apparently. And I'm also, I'm working on some other stuff that I can't mention, but Halloween Man's always going to be part of my career because it's my baby. So I've sort of just decided that I'm gonna do it until I drop, or I'm too senile or whatever. Like the comic saved my life. I mean that in like a real legitimate way. So like I feel like I have to be a good shepherd of it.
Yeah. So how did your team come about for Halloween Man then? Or the universe of Halloween Man, like you said. Like I feel like Halloween Man is just like saying like the MCU, like because you've got
I need
Lucy,
I
you've got
I need to come up with a punchier name for the universe. um so like, are you meaning like the creative team or just
yeah,
the characters? The
creative
creative
team.
team.
Yep.
So initially, back when I was when I was doing the web comic, most of the people that I worked with were people I found on the Miller World forum, because that was a big thing, and that's how I met Nicola. That's how I met Sergio Calve, who has been an artist on there for a long time. Russell Hillman, who is my editor, that's how I met him, and I still work with him to this day. Of course, now I meet a lot of people at conventions, and I just also have like a stable of people that I work with a lot.
Yeah.
And you like having to work, you like working with a lot of the same artists, because you feel like that they already have a version of their characters in their head that is reliably close to what you envision. The two people that I have two things that are brand new. They're going to be on the Global Comics platform at the end of October. And both of those artists, Paulo and Luis, like they're two guys that I've worked with a bunch of times, and it's because they're reliable in the way they present the characters. And it's less, I hate to sound stodgy, but like when you're working with somebody new, there's that has its own benefits. It's in its own things that are exciting, but there's also knowing people that they're going to present your vision. That's a special thing.
That's awesome. Well, I know you said you have some other stuff that you're working on in the mix. So how can people best follow along with you with what you're creating so they know what's dropping?
So you can go to halloweenman.com. That'll take you to my website that has an online store, that has an events page. And by the end of October, it's also going to have even more stuff on there. Globalcomics.com. Of course, you can search for Halloween Man Comics and follow us on there. And that way you'll know about all the stuff as soon as it is uploaded onto Global Comics. On Instagram, I am Drew_Halloween. And on Twitter, I am Halloween Man Com, all lowercase, all one word.
I love it. I love that this idea of a digital platform for indie comics, because I feel like that is a market that is needed. You know, a lot of the digital platforms right now are, you know, a lot of the big publishers, and that's fine and it has its place for it. But
Yeah.
there's a place where I'm just like, man, I just need some. Sometimes it's easy to read a book on your iPad, so I'm just like, I need a digital, you know, place for indie comics. So I'm excited to explore the world of global comics more.
Well, I think it's a terrific platform that's only going to get even better. The guys that are working with, they are wizards. They are so smart, and I am happy to be a part of this team.
That's so cool. Well, Drew, thank you so much just for taking some time to talk about your comics, talk about just everything. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you, and happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween as well. So, with that being said, everyone, make sure you click the links below in this video. Go along, follow Drew, check out Global Comics, uh, dig into the world of Halloween Man, and hopefully you can find some time to curl up, grab a book, and nerd out.
Peace.